there, welcome back to the channel. I'm Teresa, and over the next hour I'm going to take you through how we draw the head and the ears of this little rabbit. This rabbit is carrying on with our theme of spring projects. We have the chicken, the bee, their videos that are already available here on YouTube, and I'll link those in the description. There's a free line drawing that you can download and trace for both of these projects, and I'll put a link in the video description for those too. And there's also a link for the line drawing for this little rabbit too. In this video, I'm going to take you through the head and the ears, but I've provided the line drawing for the complete rabbit, so you can go on and finish the body if you'd like to afterwards. I'm not using too many colours in this rabbit. You can see the colours that I'm using here. I've added a green into the little swatches here. I'm not actually doing the body and the grass, so I don't use this green in the video, but this is the green that I used. It's actually a luminance green and it's called moss green from the luminance range, and I added a little bit of grass at the bottom of the rabbit. I'm using a couple of luminance pencils and the rest are polychromos pencils, and there'll be a list of those pencils along with the reference photograph and the line drawing, and I'll leave a link to that in the description. The only other things that I'm using are a kneadable eraser. I'm also using a precision eraser just to bring in a little bit of highlight towards the end, and I'll explain how I use that as I go. And I'm using a white gel pen so that I can add a few whiskers right at the end. So over the next hour, I'll take you through the head and the ears to this little project. So grab those pencils and let's get started. Okay, so I've got my line drawing down and I'm going to take a kneadable eraser and really gently just dab over the graphite lines just to take off that excess graphite. And then what I'm going to do is take a really dark brown pencil and I'm going to go around the outline of the eye. Now I've got a sharp pencil and I'm working on it quite slowly. It's quite a small eye, so there's not a lot that we can actually get into this eye, and it would be very easy to pick up a wrong line on the eye because it is quite small. We can't really see too much of what's going on in there. I'm working around the outline and just shaping the eye at the same time. There's an extra little bit that just comes over the top, so I'm just having a sweep of the pencil. Pencil's tipped over on its side a little bit so that I can't get the pressure down. It gives me a slightly softer pencil stroke if I've got that pencil tipped over on its side, and I'm just putting the dark bits in on the side of the eye. Just bringing that around. I'm going to work over, we've got the little highlight in the eye there. I'm also going to work under. I'm just going to work in and around this highlight with the dark sepia. Now on the reference photograph, there are some really nice colours in this eye. I can see blues, I can see browns. I'm not going to be able to get all of those in. I'm not going to bother about putting any colour into that highlight other than perhaps a little sweep of grey or white or something afterwards to just sort of pull some of the other colours from the outside in, just to tint it a little bit. I'm not going to try and put too much in there because there just isn't the space. There isn't the space to put anything in there. I will just go in with like an orange brown colour. You could use any brown colour, it doesn't really matter. I'm just going to go in with a little bit of an orange brown colour to get a bit of colour in the iris at the bottom. Again, a nice sharp pencil, and I will just let that colour go over the dark sepia and just drag it down. There's not a lot that we can put into here, but a little bit of variation inside this eye will just give, it'll just put a little bit of life in there. So I've got a little bit of colour in there, and then I'm going to come back to this dark sepia and just sort of shape this lovely pupil that I can see on the reference photograph, but obviously I can't put too much in. We want the pupil to be quite big, so I want more of the the dark brown than that sort of light orangey brown. You don't have to use, that was a burnt ochre I used, but you could use something like a burnt sienna. You could use any brown colour, it doesn't matter. Just something that looks a little bit different. And then I'm just tapping the colour in to shape it. And even though it's quite small, I'm still taking my time with it, because obviously we want to put some life in the eye. We want the eye to look like it has got some life there, so that overall the rabbit looks alive. So that's as much as I'm going to do though. If that was bigger, I would be able to get much more into that. But I've just got to pick and choose what I want to put in to the eye because it's so small. So the bits that are important in there are the highlight, that's an important part, to pick out the right line so the shape's right. And also, if you can fit it in, and I've been able to fit it into this little bit, another little bit of colour underneath, so that we can just see that there's a bit of variation. And I'm just softening the bottom of that pupil. I'm going to work out away from the eye on the fur now. Now this is a buff titanium pencil. If you don't have this, you could just use something like a very light grey colour, or even a cream like an ivory colour. You could use that if you want to. But I'm going to use this buff titanium. It's a lovely sort of off-white creamy colour. Quite a good match for the coat that I can see on the reference photograph. I'm not too worried about the graphite lines. You could take those out if you want to, but I'm going to keep them in so that we can hopefully see where we're working. Actually, before I go on to this, I've just changed my mind. I'm just going to come in with my dark pencil again. I'm going to go back to my dark sepia, and I want to just very gently, and it's really gently, I don't want a strong line, but I want to just get that little mouth in there. Then I'm going to come in with this buff titanium that I was just talking about, and I'm going to get some of this lovely sort of off-white colour, really pretty colour. I'm going to work around the eye, and you'll see that I go between perhaps these oval strokes and sometimes just colouring strokes like that, just backwards and forwards. The colouring strokes are fine as long as you're happy that you can get a nice even coverage. If you're finding that you're getting quite a blunt mark on the paper at the end of each end of the colouring stroke, then perhaps just go to the circular strokes. And I'm actually going to put this colour all the way over this face, but I'm going to do it in the direction that the fur's going, and I'm just going to dab out that little bit of graphite line right on the edge of the face there. So I'm going to work the buff titanium pencil in the direction that I can see the fur goes in. So let's bring the buff titanium down over this nose, and I can go over this collar that I put into, just mark the nose there, that dark brown. There's just a little bit of pencil crumb there, let's just dab that off. And then I'm going to work up the nose, and I'm going to start to come over the chin, down into this lovely cheek area of the nose. My pencil lines are quite strong there. I'm leaving them there so that you can see where I'm working. You can take them out. I'm going to work down over the cheek, and even though you can't really see the direction of the pencil strokes because the colour's really, really light, it just means it's a really good chance to look around the reference photograph and just sort of work out the shapes, work out the direction of things, work out the flow of that fur, and spot any patterns and things or any landmarks that you want to put in. There we go. So I've got the buff titanium all the way over that face. Now we're working with colour pencils on a hot press paper, so we're working light to dark. So I've put the buff titanium down because that was the lightest colour that I could see. You can see around the eye we've got some of that lovely sort of cream off-white colour coming through. But I've got that base layer down. I'm going to start building up some of the direction of the fur and start building up some of the colours in the fur. I'm going to use a really sort of earthy brown pink colour. and I'm going to, this is Cinnamon from the Polychromos, but you can use any sort of earthy pink colour that you've got. And with little strokes that the pencil lifts off at the end of each pencil stroke, and in the direction that I can see the furs going in, I'm going to start to get some of this pink in, and I'm going to start to build up some of the structure of the face. I don't need to put too much down. I'm not pressing on hard, so if I want the pencil to be a little bit more intense or a bit more saturated, I'll just go over it a few more times. So I can see that there's some colour over the top of the eye, some pink. I can also see that there's some pink just coming off this cheek on the bottom as it tips over underneath the eye. I've got those pencil lines showing. I will try and disguise them a little bit anyway with the darker pencil to get rid of them. If I wasn't recording the video, I would take those out a bit more because they are really strong. But if I take them out, you're not going to see where I'm working, so I'm leaving them in. And I'll just disguise them. So I'm just bringing a little bit of the pink over the cheek, under the eye, as if it's coming over the rabbit's cheek. Let's have a look. We've got a little bit on the nose here. Anywhere that I can see there's a little bit of pink coming through, this coat, and I'm just working on it in the direction that I can see the furs going. So for instance, I can see the furs going up the nose here. So let's work it up the nose. And then when we get to the edge of this little nostril, it starts to come over and around the side of this nose and this mouth. So I'm letting the pencil lift off at the end of the pencil stroke. So just get a nice little feathered edge, little tapered edge on the end of the pencil stroke. But I am still putting this pencil down really lightly. You can see it's a really light application of the pencil. I'm just going to bring a bit more of this pink in here and fill that in a little bit. So I'm just switching to colouring strokes basically. Nothing special about the pencil strokes. I can see there's a little bit of pink coming over the cheek. And don't worry too much about where the pinker colours stop and start. It's not a really bright pink, it's quite a browny pink. I'm calling it a pink, but it's quite a brown pink, isn't it? Don't worry too much about where it stops and starts. We can put any sort of colour we want into this fur, really. There's a little bit that comes around under here. What's more important is that we follow the direction of the fur rather than the colour that we're putting down. I'm also going to take a little bit up the top up here, up towards the top of this face, up towards this forehead. I've got my pencil tipped over, and even though I've got a sharp pencil, can you see there's that little edge, that little flat edge, and that's really useful at keeping a nice even application of the pencil. There we go. So we've got that down. Got a little bit of this pink. I'm just going to bring a bit of the pink down here as well, down towards the nose. So I've actually put it in quite a large area. And I'm not worried where it stops and starts. It'll just become part of the fur colour. But I'm starting to build up the feel of the fur. So I've got some of that pink brown colour in, and now I want to start building up my browns. This is going to be my lightest brown that I'm using. This is Bista, and it's the lightest brown that I'm going to use. I'm going to just work into areas where I can see some of this. It's a bit more of a yellow brown. It's quite a yellow brown, and I'm going to work it in the direction that I can see the fur is going in on the reference photograph. So again, sort of taking it over the eye. I'm also going to start to bring it off the corner of the eye here, leaving this little yellow patch. And as we work down to this bottom corner, I'm going to start to curve that pencil around, because always on the edge of an eye, no matter what sort of eye it is really, you've always the first starts to curve down towards the nose. So I'm going to start to curve that down. So I'm just going to work the pencil down towards the side of this nose here, and then it curves around as it sort of drops over the cheek. I'm going to work around the under part of the eye, pretty much over where we put that pink colour. You see the pink colour still coming through. Let's work on the back of the eye as well. And on the back the fur starts to go out towards the back of the head, doesn't it? So I'm starting to pull that fur out towards the back of the head and then curve it over. And you probably can't see these pencil lines on yours if you've taken them out. I can see them on mine, and I'm not too worried about them because I'll try and disguise them. But like I say, I would be taking them out if I wasn't recording this. Let's work the pencil up towards the back of the head. You can hear the tapping of the pencil on the page, and I'm lifting that pencil off at the end of every pencil stroke. Just on the back here, I'm going to start to curve the fur over right onto the back of the neck. So every second or so, I'm looking at the direction of the fur that is on the reference photograph. I'm using Bockingford paper. There's just a nice amount of grain, a nice amount of tooth, so that I can get in quite a few layers. I can get lots of layers down with a pencil, but there isn't that much tooth that it still really shows through after a couple of layers. So I can't really see much grain on my paper. If you're still seeing grain on your paper, then that's fine. We'll just work through it. You know, it'll take a bit of time. You might need more layers than me. You might need less layers than me to build up the fur. Okay, so I'm bringing this yellowy brown colour just around the nose. We've got these two little white patches, or lighter patches, they're not white, but two little light patches under the nose here. So I'm working out away from them, just bringing a couple of pencil marks in to just suggest those little patches are there. I'm working quite small, so I'm not going to be able to put all of the colours in. I don't want to put all the colours in, because it is a small drawing, and also I don't want to, you know, introduce lots and lots of pencil colours to this little project, keeping it as simple as possible. Let's just take the fur over this nose, over the side of the face, and let's take it up the nose a little bit. Just looking for that direction. There we go. And I'm putting the brown down, but you can see that I've still got the pink showing through, and I've still got the creamy colour that I used at the start showing through as well, that off-white colour. So it's all showing through. There we go. This is more of a reddy brown colour. This is Caput Mortuum from the Polychromos, and I want to just add an extra little bit around this eye now. The pencil's sharp, but it's tipped over, and I'm just literally following the direction of this eye, bringing in a little bit of this red pink colour. And you could use any colour you want for this. You know, I can see a little bit of purple coming through here if you wanted to use something that was a little bit more of a purple colour. But I'm just going to stick with the Caput Mortuum colour. And really gently just feather the top of this eye out and away from that dark sepia line that we put in, that really dark brown line that we put in. So just bringing that little bit of pink around that eye and just feathering out just a little bit. Not too much, just a little bit. And I'm just going back in with my dark brown as well, my dark sepia colour, and just reshaping the top of that eye, just reinforcing the dark bit as well. I'm having to be really careful because it's not very big, so I've just got the nice sharp pencil and just tapping that in to just reinforce the eye. And I'm also going to pick up on the edge of the eye and just drag that down. Drag that down towards that nose to just shape that just a little bit. There's not a lot we can put in there, but I've just shaped that eye just a little bit more. I'm going to bring in another brown and work on the face again. This is like an orange brown, a burnt sienna colour, and I'm going to, anywhere that I can see that I could just use a little bit of this orange brown, I'm going to start to build this into the fur. Really light pressure all the time. I will just top up these little nostrils actually, which I've lost a little bit. I'm just going to work into the area around this nose, tapping it in. Got that pencil tipped over on the side so that I get a really nice, soft application. And bringing in a little bit of this orange-brown colour where it needs it. Let's also bring some in on the side of the eye. Bringing it in on the back of the eye as well. Always remembering to work in the direction that the fur's going in. So remembering when I work onto the eye here to work over that cheek. The colours, I'll say it again, the colours don't have to be perfect. We just need to get the structure really. It's more the structure of the face than the colours. I'm going to work in with a darker colour now. This is one of my darkest browns, other than the dark sepia that I was using. And I'm going to, again, I always seem to start with the eye. For some reason, it always sort of makes sense for me to start around the eye and sort of get the curve going around the eye. So this is a dark, nice dark chocolate colour brown. This is my walnut brown from the Polychromos, but you can use any dark chocolate coloured brown. And I'm going to bring in a little bit more structure to the face. And I'm just going to use this dark brown to start to bring in some of these darker areas. So I'm going to work just along the top of the head first of all. I'll go up into the ears in a second and bring in some tiny little taps of the pencil to bring in a little bit of detail. Not too much. Picking out these darker bits. So I can see that there's a lovely dark bit here as this is sort of the cheekbone around here. So we've got this lovely dark bit just as we go from the eye down onto the cheekbone. It curves over. And this is where I'll be able to disguise some of these pencil marks now. So I'll work along this pencil line and disguise that. Now I find the best way to build up the fur texture is not to do lots of parallel lines with the pencil. Sometimes just little sort of quick scribbles works. I find when I'm working on fur, the faster that I can put that fur in, so it means I don't think about it when I'm working on it, and you know, I'm sort of letting the pencil do its own thing. Like here, really, I'm not really thinking about where I'm putting those lines. I'm just letting that pencil work down in the direction that I want it to work down in. But it gives me more of a random texture, and I find that's really, really useful when I'm putting fur in. If I think about it too much, I'll end up with lots of parallel random lines, and it doesn't really look that natural then. Now I've got whiskers in here. I'm just going to go over it with like a white gel pen at the end to put the whiskers in. Just keeping it nice and simple, so I'll just put those whiskers in at the end. So I'm not worrying about sort of preserving those whiskers or worrying about those whiskers. I'm just going to work over them, and then I'll put those in right at the end. I'm just building in a little bit of dark around this nostril and this nose. Now I've already put the dark line in on the nose. We've already got that in. But what I need to do is to just pull that line away, pull the pencil away from the dark line and up towards the nose in the direction that the nose is going. So it's sort of curving around a little bit, isn't it? And that's just going to pull the dark line up, and it's going to make the nose look dimensional. There's not much we can get in here, so we've got to remember that we're not going to be able to put too much in. Sometimes just a little sweep of the pencil is going to be enough because it's just not very big. Let's work this darker brown pencil out on the side of this face. Let's just darken down. I want to make sure that I don't lose that little mouth. And I also want to darken. So it's on the line drawing. I've lost it on my line drawing now, but it is on the line drawing. We've got this little line under the eye around here, haven't we? And that is the cheekbone coming over. So that's quite important that we make this a little bit darker, just working around this face, curving it around. And at the same time, I want to make sure that I've got a little bit of this darker texture going up. There's a little eyelash there, so I'm just going to bring a little eyelash in. Take that up towards the top of the head. I've got this pencil tipped over, so there's pretty much no pressure going down. Just the weight of the pencil really, and I'm just pushing and pulling it to make the fur texture. If I need to go back and darken a bit, I'll just go back and darken a bit. So I will darken it down the side of this eye. And the more you build the layers up, the better the pencil will start to feel when it goes down. You know, you'll be getting through that texture of the paper. So I'll just keep working around with these darker bits. There we go. So we've started to get a nice bit of structure on the face area. I'm going to come in with a really light grey colour. This is warm grey 1, and I'm just going to work over the area. I'm going to work over the face. Sometimes in little circular strokes because I just want to sort of blend out the edge of the nose there. Sometimes in directional strokes. I'm just blending things together, just bringing things together. So I'm working in the direction that the fur's going on the face. You can see it's just sort of smoothing everything out together a little bit, isn't it? So it's just blending. It's blending those colours, those layers that we put down, blending them together. Now, at what point you blend, That's going to be quite an individual sort of decision, really. It's quite a personal decision. We have to get quite a few layers down, or we have to get some layers down before we can blend, because if there's nothing down on the paper, there's nothing to blend. You need to be able to push the pencil around, push those layers around. So obviously we need pencil down on the paper to be able to blend. As to whether I use circular strokes or directional strokes, if I want to sort of soften out the pencil lines underneath a little bit, because perhaps I think they're a little bit too harsh, perhaps I can see pencil lines, they were a little bit scribbly, a bit scratchy, you know, a bit sort of sketchy. If they're like that, then I'll use circular strokes. So here, for instance, I'm just using circular strokes, and you can see that the pencil lines underneath are softening out a little bit. If I wanted to keep the pencil underneath sort of, oh, you know, I was quite happy with it, I wanted to keep that direction of the pencil underneath, then I will use the same direction to blend. So here, for instance, I'm going to blend in the direction that I've already started to put the pencil down in. There isn't a right and there isn't a wrong with blending. Either you want to sort of soften what's underneath and pushing the pencil from another direction, so like circular strokes, oval strokes will work well, or you just want to keep that pencil as you've put it in the previous layers, and then you can just blend in that direction. Now I'm not pressing on hard to blend. You can see I've still got the pencil tipped over. I don't want to press on hard. I can do this because I didn't press on hard with the layers underneath, with the pencil underneath. If I'd pressed on really hard with the pencil underneath, it would be much harder for me to blend. I'd have to press on harder to blend. I'm just going to work back in with my orangey brown colour again. This is my burnt sienna because I want to bring in a little bit more in this area, just around the nose, around here. I'm not bringing too many colours in. There are definitely more colours that I could bring into this, but I'm not going to. I'm going to keep it quite simple as I can in terms of the colours. Let's just top up. Sometimes when you blend, you see you might desaturate a little bit. We've just put the warm grey, the really light warm grey all the way over this. And sometimes it just desaturates what's gone down underneath. So you have to go back and you have to sort of top up those colours to make them quite intense again. But that's okay. You just work back over what you've done. Sometimes at this stage now, all you might need is a glaze, just to put that colour back, make that colour quite intense. I will come back with my pinky brown colour as well, and I will, again, by this stage it's pretty much just a glaze. I'm just working over the top. You can see, even though I'm working over the top and I'm going over and over this, there's not much colour that's coming off that pencil. And that's where I want to be with it. I just want to put a glaze. I'm going to make sure I've got this lovely light bit around the nose and on the top of the cheek. I'm going to take my kneadable eraser and I'm going to shape it into a pencil. And I'm just going to dot into this little bit right on the back. I'm dotting into this little patch on the back to just lighten that up a little bit. And I'm also going to dot a little patch right on the edge there. I had that patch, didn't I? And I've sort of lost it as I've been blending, but that's fine. I'm just going to take the kneadable eraser, staying on the outside of the eye. I don't want to go into the eye, but I just want to dab that on. You could use your Tombow, you know, any eraser that you've got, any sort of precision eraser that you've got. But I'm just going to bring a little bit of highlight through here and there. And the nice thing about the kneadable eraser is that it sort of hits and misses the paper. So it creates texture as you're working with it. And that can be really useful to create a little bit of texture. Texture that isn't quite so easy to sort of put in manually with the pencils. So I'm just pulling through a little highlight here and there. Nothing really special. Keeping it really quite simple, but just pulling a little highlight through. There we go. I'm just going to come back to my darker brown. This is my walnut brown. And I'm going to bring in one last little bit of depth. Like I say, when I was blending, I will have blended out some little bits. So I'm just going to bring the darker values through, the darker areas through, just refining and re-establishing some of these dark bits and adding a few sort of suggestions of pores in this face. I'm not even worried about making sure that all these pores are lined up properly. I just want to put that suggestion in. So I feel I've got enough information in here now to be able to move on. Now that doesn't mean to say that my face is finished, because I never ever call anything finished until I put the pencils down. So I may still come back and work on it some more, but I've got enough information in here to be able to say that I'm happy and I can move on to another area, and I can come back and I can have a look at this when I've worked on another area and put another area in. And I find that it's the way that I always work. I never ever call anything finished until right at the end of the drawing, and I find that works for me. What it means is, it means that I don't have to worry at this stage, have I got this as good as I'm going to be able to get it? It takes the pressure off. If you say to yourself, well, it's okay, I'm going to move on now because I can see the structure of this area, I can see what I'm working with, I'll move on to another area, and if I need to come back and adjust it, I'll come back and adjust it. And that, I think, takes the pressure off. So you don't have to worry about having something absolutely spot on. And that's not the aim anyway. We're never looking for something to be absolutely perfect. We're just looking for it to, look nice at the end and enjoy the process and learn as we're going. That's all we're looking for. So if you're someone that struggles with it trying to be perfect, just say to yourself, I'll just move on, put another area in, and I'll come back and I'll have a look and might need to adjust it. There we go. Okay, let's have a look at these ears. Let's get these ears in. So I'm going to come back to my my buff titanium again. Let me just dab into those ears just a little bit. I'm going to use my buff titanium again to get a nice even base layer, and I'm just literally going to cover the whole of the ear. And of course you could use your light grey, your warm grey one if you're using polychromos. You could use your ivory, any sort of light colour. The way that I decide what base layer I'm going to put down is I look at the reference photograph and I look to see what is the lightest colour that I can see in that drawing. Now it might only be a couple of pixels. It might be a really tiny little bit. But if that's the colour that I can see as the lightest colour, that's the colour that I try and get as close to as possible for a base layer. There we go. So I've got that buff titanium in. I'm just going to, again, dab off those little crumbs. I like to try and keep my work quite neat and tidy as I'm going. So I just use the kneadable eraser. You can see all the little crumbs there. Use the kneadable eraser to do that. This time what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my darker pencil, and before I put the underlayers in, I'm going to get some structure in. So I'm going to use my burnt sienna pencil and I'm going to get a little bit of structure into this ear. The reason that I'm doing that is because as you start to build up the browns and the pink colours in this ear, it'll be very easy to lose that line drawing. So if we get the line drawing in first, it'll be much easier. Now I'm going to bring some of this structure in with this orangey brown colour. But again, any brown colour you've got. I can see from the reference photograph that there's quite a pinkness coming through, so you could use your caput mortuum type colours, and I will probably go in with a little bit of that afterwards again because I've already used the caput mortuum. I don't want to bring in too many more colours, but I can bring in a little bit. I've got that pencil tipped over. My pencil is pretty much always tipped over. Always tipped over on the side, never sort of up like this. So I'm always using a little bit more of the side of the pencil rather than the very, very, very tip. And you can see I'm just curving the pencil strokes around. And then just curving it down on the bottom of the ear, just picking out some of the darker lines, some of the structure. I'm going to work around here as well. Just getting these darker bits in. Doesn't matter too much if it's not the right colour. I mean, you know, I wouldn't do it with black, but it doesn't really matter that it's not the right colour. It's a colour that's going to go into the fur anyway. Just using these lovely warm brown colours. So it's a colour that's going to go into the fur. And I can just start to bring a little bit of structure into the ear. It's not going to take too long. The whole little project isn't going to take too long. The face always takes a little bit longer because we have to sort of work on the eye and the nose, and you know, we have to sort of make sure that we're happy with that before we can move on. Bring a little bit of life into the face, but then we'll be able to pick up a little bit of speed now as we work through the rest of it. So I'm just bringing a little bit of this burnt sienna into areas where I can see I need to bring a little bit of structure in, and also perhaps a little bit of the orange brown colour as well. There we go. And again, I've left the pencil lines on so you can see where I'm working, but I would take those out a little bit more if I wasn't drawing under the camera. I do want to bring another colour into this. This is brown ochre 10% from the Luminance pencils. I'm not using too many Luminance pencils. I've used the Buff Titanium, I've got this one, but the brown ochre 10% is a really, really useful colour. If you don't, this is a Luminance pencil from Caran d'Ache. If you don't have that many Luminance pencils, the ones that I can really recommend are the percentage pencils. They really are useful. So, you know, if you want to just get one or two of the Caran d'Ache Luminance, the percentage pencils are really, really good. I'm just going to cover the whole area pretty much. And this is why it's useful to have put the darker colour underneath now, because you see as you build up these brown colours that are going to go into this ear, you'll start to lose the line drawing. So by sort of getting those in, getting those lines in, those important lines, it means you can work over the top and you don't need to worry about your line drawing. Especially if you have taken out a lot of the lines. I've left some of mine in, but if you've taken out quite a bit of your graphite lines, these are going to be really helpful, these darker lines. I'm going to bring in a couple of pink colours. I'm going to use the one that we've already been using, the sort of browny one. And this is quite a cool pink colour. This is light magenta. Really lovely, lovely pink colour. I use it quite a lot. And I'm going to bring in some of this pink into this ear. So I'm going to work around this top part. Just working with this lovely glaze of pencil. So a glaze is just a really, really light application of the pencil. It's a really thin layer of the pencil or paint or whatever it is you're working with, so that it goes down but it lets the other colours underneath come through. And really, really useful. I'm going to use the cinnamon sort of browny pink colour on the back here as well, just to get some colour in these ears. Don't need to bring too much in, just tinting that ochre colour towards the pink. Rabbit's ears are fairly translucent, aren't they? They're quite thin, so you can see the lovely sort of blood vessels and veins and things coming through. And that's what we've got down here a little bit. This is the cooler pink colour that I was just talking about. and I'm going to bring this into the middle of this ear. Now the lovely thing about having put the luminance pencil down underneath, these Polychromos pencils now just glide over the surface. So the glazes are going down really, really beautifully, really pretty. No pressure going down on the pencil, just gliding that pencil over the paper. It can be really useful to mix and match brands of pencils. You can get some really nice effects when you do use different brands together. So for instance, you know, the luminance underneath here, and then the Polychromos over the top just glides. Now that works really well on this paper. You know, it might be different on your paper because pencils work differently. They don't work the same on every surface. Every brand, even hot press paper, they don't work the same on every brand of paper. So it's always a good idea when you get a new paper in, when you know you've bought a new paper or you've had new pencils or something, to just do a bit of a test and just see what works with your pencils, get to know your pencils. So I've got those lovely pink colours down. This is my really light or lightish brown colour that I was using. This is the Vista, and I'm going to work back over where I've worked with that orange brown colour to start with. I'm back to putting in a little bit of detail now, so I'm using those pencil strokes that just lift off at the end of each stroke. Let's just start to darken down at the bottom. So the Polychromos over the top of that luminance pencil, they're quite sort of translucent. Polychromos are a lovely transparent pencil anyway. They've got some lovely transparent colours, so they let the light come through. They let the other colours that you've put underneath come through. And when they go over the top of that luminance pencil, they just glide beautifully and also look really, really sort of translucent, really transparent, which is quite nice as we want to get a little bit of that transparency come through in the ear, don't we? So I'm just bringing some of this yellow-brown colour around. And it's just a suggestion, it's not a very big drawing, so I'm not trying to get everything in. I won't be able to get everything in. I want something that just looks like a nice, real-looking rabbit at the end. I'm going to do the same on this side. I'm going to work down this bit, working in the direction that I can see the furs going, but I'm working in quite a solid area here because I'm not working on the edge, I'm working in the middle of this ear. So I'm just running that pencil backwards and forwards, and it's just giving me the texture, the overall feel of the fur. If I move to the edge, I would create little wispy pencil strokes to create the fur there, for instance. So I would lift the pencil off the paper, and I've gone out over the ear a little bit there. Let's just take that back a bit. There we go. But I would use little wispy pencil strokes there. But when I'm working on, I'm going to call it a solid area because I'm right in the middle of the shape really. When I'm working there, I can get the texture by just running that pencil backwards and forwards. But I've got to remember to run it in the direction that the fur's going in. Let's just bring a slightly darker bit right down on the bottom there. Let's have a look. This is this ear, isn't it? So that's that ear there. Here we go. I'm just going to come back to this pink again because I can see that there's a little bit of this cooler pink around here. So I'll bring a little bit of that in. So I'm not pressing on hard, just running that pencil backwards and forwards to get that glaze in. Let's come in with the dark coloured pencil now. And I'm going to bring some of this dark, so this is back to my walnut brown, but whatever darker pencil that you're using, dark brown colour. And I'm going to start to build in some of these darker bits. I'm doing it fairly quickly. I'm not spending too much time. You can obviously spend a lot longer. Even on a small drawing like this, you could spend much longer, but I want to keep it to a nice manageable length. Let's blend the top of the head into this ear. So we always want to make sure that even though we draw the subject, the rabbit here, in sections, we want to make sure that those sections do all sort of join up and come together nicely. So here I want to make sure that the top of the head and the ears blend together. So I want to sort of feather out one area into another. And once I've put the area in, so once I've put these ears in, it's a really good idea to go back and to check that you don't need to adjust the head. That's what I was talking about not sort of calling it finished until the end, until you want to call it finished. Because it could be that once you've put an area in, you need to go back and adjust the area that you've just worked on, because every area, every shape, it's always relative to what it's sat next to or what it's close to. So you will need to go back and have a look at it. You might need to darken bits down, you might need to adjust bits. Let's just bring in some of these shapes again. So I've got that pencil tipped over on the side. I've got a sharp point, but I've got the pencil tipped over on the side. This has obviously got to go darker behind here. So just working in some dark colour, just to make it look like this ear is sat in front of this ear. So this ear has got to go a little bit darker. And if you feel that you are losing, I've lost the difference between the two ears there. So I can either make this one lighter or this one darker. I don't want to make that one too dark just yet. So what I will do is I'll dab in to this one with my eraser and just pull out a little bit of light. It could be that I'll have to make the other one a bit darker as well. But let's just pull out a little bit of light there first, and then I'll go back in behind this one. Let's just work that pencil backwards and forwards. And when I'm trying to get really thin lines with the pencil, I'm trying to make them random, which is why I'm not taking the pencil off the paper. But pushing and pulling the pencil can be a lot easier at getting nice little fine lines. So I'm actually just sort of pushing and pulling that pencil. I'm not working across, I'm pushing and pulling. And you can get some nice little pencil marks. I still want the other colours to come through underneath. So I don't want to completely cover the whole area with this dark brown colour. I took a little bit of the colour out there, didn't I? So I'm just going to come back to my brown ochre and just smooth that out, because I can see that's raw paper. So let's make that a little bit lighter there. There we go. I'm going to work around up here, still with this brown pencil, tipping it over on its side to get a really broad part of the pencil down on the paper. I just want the suggestion of the fur and the structure. I don't want the details really. I don't want to put detail in. A drawing of this size, this isn't very big, and a drawing of this size would probably struggle with lots and lots of detail. I wouldn't want to put lots of detail into this. I want to just keep the suggestion of the drawing there, because it's really quite small. And if you're looking at something, you know, this small through a camera, you wouldn't see all that detail. You just really see the shapes and the values. little bit of suggestion here and there. So that's what I'm going to try and replicate. And it's always a really good idea to keep your reference photograph to a very, very similar size, the same size if possible, as what you're actually drawing, the size that you're drawing on the paper. So it means that you can actually get a good idea as to what you can and can't see on that reference photograph. If you can see detail at that sort of size, then that's okay, you can try and put it in. But if you can't see that detail, you know, you're not going to want to try and put it in. You're going to want to sort of keep the detail similar to what you can see on the reference photograph. I'm going to bring a little bit of this Bista back into the middle of this ear again. So just bring a glaze of that into the middle bit there. And then I'm going to come in with this caput mortuum, which we added around the eye, didn't we? So I'm going to bring a little bit of this lovely pink red colour into these ears. If you didn't have this, you could use your burnt sienna. Let's just bring a little bit through, just dragging the pink, the darker pink colour from the outside into the middle of the ear. Just to shape that ear, just to give the impression of the ear sort of curving around and into this deep part, this middle part. Let's bring a little bit in there as well, darken that down. Right down into the middle bit of the ear there. There we go. So I'm keeping it simple, but we're building up the structure. I'm going to use this caput mortuum as well, just to add a couple of those little blood vessels that I was just talking about that you see in a rabbit's ear. So I'm just going to bring a couple of those in as well. Don't need to put much in, just a couple, and a little bit of the pink inside the ear there. Really don't need to put much in. I want to just darken down just on the inside of that ear. I'm going to bring in quite a dark blue-grey colour. This is Payne's grey, and I'm going to bring in a little bit. Now I want to use it really sparingly because of course it's quite a strong colour, but I just want to add a slightly cooler area just inside this ear. We've used the cool pink in there, haven't we, to just put inside that ear, and I'm just going to use a little bit of that grey. Again, it's just a glaze, it's the tiniest glaze, but it's just going to put a tiny bit of blue in there and just give me the suggestion that, just give the suggestion that there's something inside that ear. I'm going to bring a little bit over here as well. Around there, there we go. And I think that will probably do. I will just come back to the walnut again and just darken that edge a little bit. But any colour that you feel you want to use, you don't have to use the same colours. Just darkening down around here. This is back to my orangey brown colour. This is back to my burnt sienna, and just need to darken that down just a little bit. Just pick out any of the darker values that I need to pick out. And you might need to put more layers down on your work. It'll just depend on what paper you're working on and how much texture that paper's got. This is the dark sepia, and I just want to darken that line down a little bit. So I'm just dragging the dark sepia around there just to emphasize that dark bit just a little bit. And I'll just emphasize that little bit there as well. There we go. So I'm just topping up any bits that I think could just go a little bit darker. There's not much, just a little bit, topping that up. And here's my finished little drawing. I went on to do exactly the same on the body, built up the fur from light to dark. I did use a green pencil. You could use any green pencil at the bottom to add a little bit of grass to the bottom of it. I did take an eraser because I realised at the end that once again I'd closed up this little gap at the edge of the eye, around the eye here, and this little bit, and also a little bit on the top. So I just took an eraser. You could use any precision eraser, your Tombow, whatever. Just took that eraser and just worked in an extra little bit of highlight. And then finally what I wanted to just do on camera was just to explain that I'm going to take a white gel pen and just bring over a few little whiskers here and there. Bring a couple of whiskers over with that white gel pen. There we go. On the other side, what I'll do is I will take a fairly light colour. Obviously the white won't work on the other side, so this is my Bista, and I'm just going to bring in a few little whiskers on the other side. There's still a few there that are the graphite pencil lines, and that will work as well. So I'll just bring a few in on that side. So there we go. That completes our 3 little spring theme drawings that we have been doing here on YouTube over the last couple of weeks. If you would like to have a go at the chicken or the bee, you'll find a link to the videos in the description, and also a link to the free line drawings that you can get for those, along with the reference photographs and a list of the pencils. And of course, if you want to have a go at this little rabbit, you'll find a free line drawing over on the free tier of my Patreon, so that you can draw this little one here too. If you would rather have a fuller version of the rabbit, there is a rabbit that we have been drawing over on Patreon. We actually made it into a card over on Patreon, and I take you through the whole process of that rabbit from start to finish, step by step, body and everything. So there we go. Really hope that you have enjoyed these 3 little drawings. If you have, don't forget to give it a like before you go. Don't forget to subscribe, because I've got more of these little projects coming. So if you click on that little bell, you'll get a notification when the next one is available. Really hope that you have enjoyed drawing these little spring projects with me, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye for now.